Welcome. I'm Claire Chancellor from Be Your Purpose Coaching. Today, I talk to the incredible Fiona Fitzgerald from Quantum Star Healing. When I met Fiona, our souls got so excited to I finally found you again. Because Fiona shares a similar perspective and an identity about what we do as healers. We share a similar perspective on what it means to travel beyond past lives, beyond between lives, and into the realities before Earth to explore your soul's lineage. She has a fascinating history about understanding energy attachments, what drains your energy. We can talk all about the in-depth about bands of energy, archons, aliens, and everything in between. So you will see from our conversation that I'm really, really, really excited to get started, and my energy is quite hyper. But Fiona's very patient with me as I dial that down. And we get to hear all of the incredible things that she's witnessed when it comes to remembering your intuition, remembering your soul's journey. I can't wait to share this with you because this one has so far topped all conversations I've ever had with any healers. So let's get started. Alrighty, everybody, I want to say a really big welcome to my beautiful friend Fiona. Hi, Fiona.
It's so lovely to be here, Claire. Thank you for having me.
Today we're in for a fun conversation, right? Talking all things quantum, quantum healing, cutting cords, polarity. Anything else there that I left out, Fiona?
No, I think that's it.
I can't tell you how absolutely excited to talk to you, Fiona, because since we met, you're like my favorite person.
Oh,
It's just like,
ditto. You speak my language.
oh, I know. And so to finally have somebody who almost has that X-ray vision to see beyond this reality, to be able to understand what people's blocks are, to help people better understand their purpose here on Earth and what they were doing beyond Earth, I was such a kid in a candy store, like, yeah, let's play.
The same. I absolutely, and I love that you have, different perspectives and sometimes semantics to me, and it makes it all the more fun and exciting. It's just like a breath of fresh air.
Yay, yay, I feel that too. So I'm gonna just jump straight into the deep end, Fiona, and ask you like how in your words, what is it that you do?
Yeah, sure. So I guess when I started doing healing, I was very much straight away really drawn to probably the attachment side of things. So seeing people's attachments in their field, old past life traumas, and where things were physically sitting in the body and the field, and how it was affecting their belief systems and basically how life was revolving around them.
Yeah.
Um, and that's really what I sort of started with and still do. And then I started to sort of work on more the ways that we sort of allow these things to be in our field, and these sort of archetypes or shadow aspects that sort
Yeah.
of are holding on to that. So really I'm just trying to help people live their best life, get rid of some of this old baggage that we've been carrying around for millennia.
Yeah, yeah, I love that. The thing that I'm noticing though is, I know we're just getting started, but that Fiona is so tame compared to the enormous power that you have in what you do and how you help people. Like
Oh, thank
when
you.
I came to you and a client had said, go check out Fiona. And I was like, oh my gosh, somebody who is speaking my language, because I noticed that there was some iffy energy on my website, some iffy energy that was going on in my business. And while I was so up close to my business, to my website, I needed somebody who had that vision to say, okay, there's an attachment here, there's a cord, there's an ultra shadow, and that's the conversation that I'm pretty sure my listeners are super keen to hear. How were you born with these gifts? Like, where does this knowledge come from about the other realities, Fiona?
Yeah, I think for me, my the way I came in is I did remember like a lot of past lives as soon as I came in, and I had a lot of memories of sort of being outside of my body and watching myself as a very young child or two. But I didn't really understand what intuition was, or that I was any different to anybody else. And so most of my life, I would have things happen to me, but I wasn't really using my abilities. I didn't really know. I just knew that I would get woken up at night by things and see them and have spirits asking me for help. And I just couldn't really do anything about it. And I didn't do anything about it because I just kind of let it happen, really. And there was a lot of things that I just didn't even know were, was intuition. Like I thought it was normal that if you don't want to see someone at the shops, you'll know exactly where you're going to run into who and whether they're going to see you and whatnot. Like I just thought, oh yeah, that's just normal. So I didn't really use my abilities at all until much later, probably when I was around 30, is it really started to amp up. So I do think that's our natural state. Like I do think that anyone can learn this. And I didn't come in with all the knowledge of seeing all the entities and things like that. It was a process that really started once I started doing healings for people, because I think when you're going into that kind of service to say, I'm going to help people, I'm going to help myself, that's when your abilities start to open up, or you start to see the blocks that maybe have stopped you from accessing higher knowledge, and you start to like systematically remove those, and you expand, right? You just keep getting more and more knowledge, you remember more, you're activated more. I think I learned most through doing healing, like through actually just doing healing and remembering and seeing things, in someone's field and going, I remember this, like I remember this happening to me in such and such life, or I know how to clear this. And that's how I would learn. But also too, I had like an amazing mentor too, who did teach me a lot and activated a lot in me. So it's a bit of both, isn't it? You're sort of learning and remembering and gaining drawing on experience from everything that you are in your past, whether it's pre-human lives or whatever. You're sort of bringing all of that with you. So
yeah, absolutely. Because I heard somebody say, the past is in the background. Who cares? Let it go. And it's actually like, no, there's a lot of lessons. There's a lot of mastery in the past, and to understand your soul's journey, to understand where you've been, even before Earth, you can really better understand your purpose here. If we backtrack a little, and it's like you said there that you had this awesome intuitive ability, this inner knowing. Was there a point when you got to like high school or something where you started to get the awareness that other people can't do this, or when did that switch flick for you?
Yeah, I think I did. I grew up in a family that we all would see spirits, so it wasn't I was very lucky in that sense. So when I said there's a man under the bed that, looks 20 and he looks dead, it wasn't like, get back to bed, there's no such thing as monsters. Like I had a family that was sensitive enough to sort of understand, like believe what I was seeing, so that made a big difference. But it wasn't really talked about, it was just normal. So I didn't really think it was sort of very strange or anything, or I could see things that people couldn't really see. I think in my 20s I started to understand a little bit more, like, oh, not everyone goes in astral travels. Like not everyone gets popped out of their body when they're trying to sleep, and just things like that. But I think when I really realized that I was seeing things that other people didn't see is when I started to do healing work, and other people in the class and the teacher were like, that I don't see that. People don't usually see that until much further down the track. So and then I had to sort of look for people that were seeing what I was seeing, so that I could have guidance really in what I was doing.
Because we share that we share that in a similar commonality of I had the I had the spirits coming in the middle of the night. I had my spirit guides with me. And it was only for me, yeah, about 15 years old that I realized that not everybody just has their team or their guides just chatting with them when they're on the train, going off to school. Like, oh, doesn't everybody doesn't
Yeah.
everybody do this? But sometimes with these types of conversations, people get a bit freaked out with the whole, the spirits under the bed things. Like for you, were they your guides? Were they part of the house, or were they
Yeah, they were
aliens? Like what was it?
yeah, I had a bit of all of it. And so I did have spirits that were attached to the house. I did have, unbeknownst to me at that time, my own soul contracts that were activating.
Yes.
And so I was getting a lot of spirits attached to me and things like that, because they could sense that I had, chosen really to come and do healing for people and help people. So you get a bit attacked. But it always sounds more scary than it is, right? So I always try
Yeah.
and say to people, I find that a lot of people that are doing this work really don't want to talk to their clients about it, and they don't want to talk about what they're seeing because they don't want to scare people. But like knowledge is power, right? So if
Yes.
you think of it just like from a view of it's not good or bad, or they're not, you know,
I love that.
and sometimes too, it's just a bit, if you treat it like they're being just a bit of a bully, you start getting over that fear. It's just like seeing in a different spectrum. That's all it is. And whilst it can feel a bit like, oh my goodness, what have I got on me, and what's attacking me, and it's not like that at all. And as you like gain more awareness, you realize that it's not like a scary thing, and you can actually start to discern better, and you can actually start to change your life and let go of things. I think it's better not to be sitting sort of in ignorance and ignorant bliss. I think it's good to know, and because you've then got an opportunity to be empowered and free yourself from a lot of this stuff.
Yeah.
And expand and find your true gifts, and realize that we're actually these awesome multidimensional beings that have a lot of gifts and powers. So yeah, there's always the flip side. So rather than feeling like things are happening to you, it's things are happening for you so that you expand. So it's not like a negative positive thing, it's just this woven tapestry of energy that we are. So
Yeah. Oh gosh, got 100 questions there because it's when I've got clients coming to me that are scared that their little ones are seeing spirit and things like that. One of the big lessons that I have for the mums who are scared is like, can we turn this around and notice that your children have such a beautiful gift, and that for some reason that spirit has chosen your child to help transmute them to the light or whatever's going on. And so instead of it being this fear, it's sort of like, oh, okay, thank you for trusting us. It's now time to go to the light. Like this child has free will, and their free will is that they have a good night's sleep.
yeah,
Um,
exactly.
Instead of the whole, as you were saying there, that fear that can come in, that's when you lose your power. That's when your energy shrinks, and it's like, oh,
I'd like to think of it sometimes, the way I would explain it to people is like finding out that there's germs on everything for the first time, and that you've got germs inside you, parasites inside you, and these microorganisms inside you, and freaking out. Really, we're just all connected. So it's not like seeing it as, oh my goodness, like I need to be this singular thing and everything's attacking me. It's definitely more of this just synergy of we're all energy, and we're all sort of getting feedback from the field and everybody around us at all
yes,
times. So
yeah,
I did have that as a kid. I did have the sleep paralysis. I did have the things waking me up. I did have the malevolent things waking me up. I did have the aliens. I did have a
yeah,
lot of that. But in a way, it was good for me because I my siblings sort of left the room and they would go and stay with their friends, and I didn't, and I just sat with it until I wasn't frightened anymore. Like I got over, in a way, it prepared me for the type of work that I would do, where I just would not be frightened of it.
Yeah.
because I
Yeah.
did
And the
get to
time,
a point where I was like, I'm trying to sleep and I'm just going to take back my power and I'm not going to let you make me feel frightened or scared. And that's when things sort of changed.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And you earlier you were saying about the polarity of like, yeah, we're to recognize we're part of that woven tapestry, but then there is a place for fear, there is a place for intuition, and it's having that discernment to know which one, because like to be realistic, there is some heavy duty, really messed
Yeah,
up energy out there.
there is. And there is definitely a lot of um, a lot of people do want to believe that if I just am high vibe and I love and light and then that stuff just can't touch me. And it doesn't work like that. It's everybody has these layers and layers and layers within them and that are activating when they need to, as we like when you're aligning yourself with what you want to be and a better version of yourself, the universe is saying, well, here's all the things that you have and all the layers and all the entities and all the shadow that are kind of in clashing with that energy. So here they are, and for you
Yeah,
to see and clear so that you can get to this. And
yeah,
we do have a lot of like, there has been a huge violation of free will, like on planet Earth. And so, yes, it has been, there is a lot that maybe we consented to on some levels, and that's why they've had access to our field. But
yes.
it is time to remove a lot of these old programs and things like that. And yeah, so it is a bit of that nuanced thing. It's like, yes, these things aren't just, oh, don't worry about it, just don't do anything about it. It is something you have to take action with, but it's not, trying not to see it from a victim mode, I guess, because the feeling sometimes is when you have these contracts come up and you see that you have an entity that's been making you, amplifying this, making you feel really bad about yourself, giving you the negative self-talk. The first human thing would be like, this thing is attacking me and I'm blameless here, type thing. And then you lose your power.
Yeah,
Realistically, it's when you work on yourself, and this entity is part of that, that can't hold in your frequency anymore. And so you get over that belief system that was there, the wounding that was there in the first place, and then this entity can no longer be attached into that, amplifying it and making it worse. And I guess I try and look at it from a point of view that whilst they're attacking you, they're really amplifying something and bringing it to your attention. So whilst they're drawing energy off you, they're really letting you know that there's something there to clear. So it's
yeah,
a
yeah,
bit of
yeah.
that. It's always that, like, things are happening and it's not nice, but it's, in the end, it's actually, beneficial that it's happening so that you can actually expand and get rid of that wounding.
Yeah, and so like yeah, things are happening and it's not nice, but then what you're saying there, Fiona, is you've also got the power to move it, and that's actually part of the purpose in being here. I know the cliche thing is that Earth is a school and we're here to learn, blah blah blah. But my sense is that um, when Earth herself put her hand up to be a planet, and she came in with such wisdom and technology that we just don't get in other parts of the universe, that it makes sense that she was her own sacred space. She put her hand up. Beings came here to experience things on Earth that we just don't have, like polarity, time, free will, those sorts of things. They're here for us to learn upon. But then Earth herself, being birthed into this solar system, has her own karma to go through. So we're all here learning through her. We're all here learning through the dark energy, the light energy. And I heard you saying like, yeah, that love and light thing kind of it aggravates me a little bit, and then I have to come back to neutral. But the light workers have an agenda, the dark workers have an agenda, and ultimately being here on Earth is to get out of this polarity of what's right and what's wrong, to come back to that neutral, to observe. So my question or my point is like when people do have like that dark energy attached to them amplifying, the not good that's flowing through them, what do we do? Where do we start with that?
Yeah, well, I think, and it's very difficult, I guess, if you don't have awareness of it. And that's when I guess I would seek out someone like yourself or me to help, because and I think that's why when I do summarize the healing, I do give all of the information, regardless of whether the person has had a healing before, obviously in a way that's not scary, because I want that part of them to, on the soul level, to activate and remember and what's happening, because what that does is it wakes us up a bit, and then slowly over time we expand at a pace that's that we're ready for. So that's where I would start, and I would start to discern when you have like a really amplified emotion or a pattern that just keeps occurring. You keep getting into these jobs with these bosses, you keep getting into these relationships with these people. Why does this keep happening? That's when you say, hang on a second, okay, what is going on here? There's a pattern. You keep getting sick, and that's a key indicator to say that there's some wounding, usually multiple, from past lives, from incarnations. There's something there that needs to be healed and looked at, and it's usually an indication that you've got an active entity, because it's so amplified. The pain is so amplified. It's because we tend to have these woundings and these negative beliefs, and but they become amplified when something's drawing off energy off of it, because that's how they sustain themselves, really. So
they can't make energy, can they? They have
no, and so from a compassionate point of view, I feel it's a bit like sustenance for them, but we have a whole birth and death cycle, and it's all wrapped up. But the infiltration and the violation of free will has been so outbalanced here that we've been trapped in false incarnation cycles, and we've basically been made to stay asleep. We've been really distorted, all of our systems and everything. So we've been really stuck. Stuck. This idea that we could just reach enlightenment and keep, reincarnating is it's really been hijacked.
Yeah. I'd love to go into more of that. I think, for just to catch up any listeners who may have little bits of gaps in their knowledge, what Fiona's talking about there is, you may have like a soul contract here to experience, because you're here to experience the polarity, love, hate, right, wrong. And so if you've had some core wounding on being, I don't know, rejected by your family, or rejected, like there's some core wounding, maybe it's even a simple, like a car accident, that an aspect of you will actually almost leave that human part of you. There's an aspect of you that like goes back to the spirit world to retrieve healing, and to retrieve healing, let's say that. So as that aspect of you leaves, there's almost this gap in your aura for that dark energy to attach to. And it's like, oh, awesome, here's a battery that I can suck the life out of. And that's when that anxiety comes up, the obsessive thinking, the sleep problems, the health problems,
procrastinating, the everything. Yeah, and the thing is what's kind of happened is because we have been infiltrated so badly. Say you had a life 1,000 years ago where you experienced a terrible trauma, you were exiled from your tribe, and you felt all the depths of loss, you were tortured, whatever. Because we've come in and we've, to a degree, been infiltrated and half asleep, we attract that, and it sits like an imprint. For me, it's like that's an imprint. It's sending out energy and it's drawing the same energy back, like a frequency. Yes. The pattern happens again, giving us an opportunity to free ourselves from it. But because we've got these entities, and because we're asleep and we don't remember that happened, the process happens again. Come in, next slide. process happens again. And we get this calcification that happens over lifetime, where we haven't been able to build up of this karmic kind of energy sitting in this imprint. And then we're sort of shot out the other end and just experiencing this pattern again, not knowing how to free ourselves from it. So we really have been kind of stuck just building up this stuff. And that's why there, is a lot of physical illness, because it has calcified to the point where it manifests into our physical 3D. So someone that has had persistent trouble and been held back in their path over lifetime, it might show up, say, somewhere like the knee, to be very generic. But it's kind of this nuanced thing of it just, that's why originally when I was younger, I thought past life stuff was stupid. Like, even though I remembered past lives, this is what's really funny about it. I was like, who cares? That's ego. Who cares? Who cares knowing about that? I don't care what story I had. Big deal. I'm living now. But the problem is sometimes you don't need to go necessarily into the full story or indulge in the story. That's no good. But you do have to be aware of what patterns have arisen, and really we're going back into those lives to heal those lives, like you said, to heal those aspects that have split off, to make ourselves more whole, to come, and that will help us be more present and come back into the now more, because we're retrieving this energy that we've left all over the place.
I always think of it as us as our future. It's us as a spirit guide, us as our future selves. Whenever you do past life regression, it's you as yourself going back along your time stream, back to that signature frequency of you just before that trauma happened. And it's like pouring in the knowledge and the know-how and the wisdom so that they don't have to continue down that time stream. It's like that time stream collapses, that trauma doesn't have to happen anymore. And then of course you can play with the energy and actually get that version of you to blend, and it's sort of like, let's not even do that time stream, like let's just continue what we're doing. So
I love that you do that, because I feel that is really missed a lot of times. Like, people will do past life regression work and they will maybe send some healing to that life, but they don't empower that version of themselves in that time stream. And that's really what I found too. Let's go of the trauma of it. That is what collapsed the time stream, because otherwise it still kind of sits there a bit like an unclosed loop.
And I think that's where past life regression sometimes gets a bad rap. It's like, okay, look at that story, like, oh look, I was Cinderella, whoopie-doo. But it's actually like, no, let's go look at that core wounding of the rejection from the man, or not good enough, or the stepsister, like whatever is playing out in this lifetime, it's because it's playing out in the past.
And like you said, sometimes with those soul contracts, sometimes with that exact person,
Oh yes, which I imagine then you've got your stories, your experience of that soul contract coming back, and it's sort of like, hello, you again.
And it can be difficult sometimes having that awareness when you go into a new job, or you if you have that on and you kind of go, but it really does help, because you can clear that, whilst you're not working on that person's energy, you work on your wounding, and it can be amazing how the relationship just changes, because the charge has been taken out, that trauma belief is no longer has a reason to be getting drawn to you, and the dynamic changes between you and others, or you and your environment, or what happens, So that's really why we're doing, why we're doing the work. It's not to just as you said, not to just indulge in the story and go, oh, what was I doing, 1,000 years ago? It's really just to actually do some healing work.
Yeah, absolutely. I hope this isn't into your privacy, but recently we had a session and I took you between lives, where there was this meeting within the cosmic the Cosmic Council, the Star Council, and having that meeting to say, Fiona, when they said it's time to come to Earth, were you excited or resistant? And you came across some surprises there.
I was so surprised, and I love that you work like that in a different way to me, because I was blindsided by this sort of sabotage that did happen in my life review. I always knew that I had some kind of sabotage. I knew that I'd come in embodying a lot of like trauma in my physical body from past lives, and there was a reason why I chose to do that. And I knew there was sabotage, but I never went to see my life review. It's not something that I've ever really done, even for sessions for clients, because I know to a degree there is always manipulation that happens in those life reviews, as we've spoken about before, where we do get a bit of infiltration to sort of keep us not living our purpose in this karmic grid. So I didn't think to go there, because that's just all manipulated. Well, I did have quite a shock that I did want to be here, and I did have a purpose, and I did put my hand up for a lot of things. But the most shocking part was that I was excited to do it, and I was happy and proud, and it did change my entire outlook, because I'd sort of been made to believe that that's not, that I hadn't really come in with a purpose, and I hadn't really come here with anything else but a bag load of resentment to come and clear all the karma that I'd managed to build up.
Yeah. And that, I think so many of our fellow starseeds, crave to go back home. What was I thinking being here? But
well, I definitely didn't have that, because I did have that when I was younger, and I got kicked that out to the door, because we are meant to ascend in our physical body. We are meant to do it on Earth. We are meant to be here. So this idea constantly of I want to go home and I don't want to be here doesn't serve us at all, because we're giving away our power by doing that. We did actually want to be here. We did actually choose to come here, and like once you get over that idea that we're trapped here, then you start to see, no, I can create here. I can create this new energy band.
Well, I mean, there's 3 different conversations there, but let me see if I can hold on to them.
I'm sorry, I'm very tangential. Just go off all over the place.
I know that lifetimes before, I had actually wanted to go home, and so in those lifetimes committed suicide. And it was like the life review said, you signed up for this contract, mate, like you got to get back there, you've got to go finish it. And so any kind of hint when I got to my spiritual sort of, I've always, like you, I've always had that spiritual awareness, but that next level, it was like wanting to go home is not going to solve anything. And it's sort of like the curiosity. That's actually what got me to Between Lives, was the curiosity. Well, okay, why did I choose this body? Why did I choose this path? And then calling in the Star Council to say, it's time for you to give me some answers that are going to help me on that next path. Otherwise, what are we doing? And you sort of had similar experience when we did that Between Lives, of like, look at this fabulous energy, and this, like, I was so excited. I love what I get to do when it's like you're getting this awareness about your role with codes and nervous system and energy. It was like,
yeah, it was so cool. And it was also very like just because there's so much, it made so much sense. It made sense. I think that's the beautiful thing about how our journey unfolds as we expand, is often at the beginning, when you have patterns re-arising, you think you're failing, you think you step back, I'm not learning my lessons properly, and you kind of go into a bit of self-shame, and are shamed by other people in the community usually, like, oh, you're just not working on your stuff, and that's why you haven't, that's why you're not progressing or whatnot. But really all it is you're just shedding the next bit. It doesn't mean you're going back. You're just revisiting to get rid of the next part. And once you start really getting into the work, it becomes a beautiful process, because you hold yourself more in compassion, in love, and you actually start to see what it's doing for you, where it's unfolding, what it's taking you to. And so part of that healing did for me was like a wonderful unfolding of patterns that I've actually been working on most of my life. But rather than seeing it like that, it was like the next unfolding of that. And it made so many more things make sense. And it also makes you realize I was really looked after all along the way. I really was looked after, but, you know, my team were really looking out for me, and I was pointed in the right direction, and my intuition was right. And so those things, that's the beautiful part of the journey, when you're not going into feeling sorry for yourself about being in the chaos of a layer. Once you can step out of that or hold yourself in that much better, it actually starts to become a really cool journey. You start to be able to see how much you can create.
Wow, yeah. Well, we've gone from this reality, past lives, between lives. Let's get to the good stuff, Fiona. When we got talking, and you had the linguistics similar to me in the sense of talking about bands of energy, soul contracts, you were talking about cosmic witches, you were talking about archons and pure aliens, or pure greys, I should say. And I'm like, yeah, that's the stuff that I love to talk about. I don't really have a very good structured question, but can you talk about that for the audience on what all of that means? Especially like, okay, so great, there's grey aliens now. What, like, I'm just going to hand it over to you, Fiona.
Yeah, sure. Well, I guess if we think of, you know, the Earth and all the multiverses, there are so many different types of energy bands. There are so many types of beings that don't occupy, you know, the 3D form, and they all, you know, it's just like a massive ecosystem, you know. So there is any type of creature you can imagine that they have imagined in sci-fi film and whatnot, and they, you know, have all interacted with us on some level. So a lot of the times when people are saying, oh, I'm waiting for the aliens to come, they're already here, they're already in your field, they're already mucking about with your website. But it is that type of thing where I guess for me, I didn't really see that type of being when I was younger. I saw mainly the earthbound spirits that couldn't pass over. I did see some things, but I didn't see them as clearly as when I started to do healing. So I guess my journey started with Reiki, and I kind of got dragged along to that, and I didn't really feel aligned with it when I was doing it. And I didn't really feel like I was good at it. You know, I had a lot of blocks around healing, like a lot of healers do, to stop you sort of going on that path. And then all of a sudden, it was like the knob volume went up. So I was doing a healing for my brother, and I saw immediately these entities, and I saw these devices in people's bodies, and that's where it kind of started. And then I went from there. And I started to remember a lot of these entities, and I remembered what they specifically liked to do in people's field. So for me, from like a personal point of view, when I was younger, I did have a lot of dysmorphia. I had a lot of negative self-talk. I had the huge inner critic, and I just could not get away from this inner critic constantly. When I started to see entities, I started to realize, oh, archons like to feed off that self-loathing, that real self-shame vibration that we've carried over from lives. And basically that's when I started to sense this energy likes to draw this out of us. This energy likes to draw fear. This energy likes to do this type of thing to our field. And it was like just a process of remembering and learning as I was working on people's fields. So it means that when you're working, I guess because you've obviously had experience from, you know, pre-human incarnations, and you've maybe worked in some of those energy bands, you've maybe been that type of being, you start to sort of realize and remember how to get rid of this infiltration for other people, and you start to get a real bird's eye view. And I guess you start to realize too that in a way some of these beings you've actually had agreements with them yourself, and that's why they have access to your energy. And so that's why sometimes when people are doing protective work for themselves and they're still getting attacked, and they're going, why am I still getting attacked? Because on some level they have consensual access, even though we might not be consenting to it now. We might have like a really, really past life, pre-human life, might even be a human life where we unconsciously sort of wanted power or wanted salvation or wanted something and brought this energy in.
Yes, in exchange.
In exchange. And now it's like, you know, you got this and now I'm drawing this. So in a way, sometimes that's why the protective bubble doesn't really work with that, you know, why you can still be attacked and still have things.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. So yeah, because I know.
So I don't know if I explained any of that very, very well, but there are lots of different types of beings. Some are beneficial, some aren't. Some, they all have their own motivations. It's like humans, you know.
Yeah, they all have their own agenda.
And things aren't what they seem. So if you see the nice fluffy angel or the nice fluffy guide or the nice fluffy goddess or the nice fluffy ascended master, they're not always what they seem. And sometimes they're manifestations of that energy, you know, as in we've as a society have pumped so much energy into, say, this vision of this ascended master, that we've actually created a specific false of, you know, consciousness. So it's all kinds of, you know, there are a billion beings that call themselves God. There are a billion beings that call themselves Archangel Michael, all those types of things. So it does become a real, as you go on your path, discerning, testing, discerning.
I'm just thinking of a few clients that were, no, actually going to backtrack a little bit, because I know that from the medium's journey, so somebody who speaks to the spirit, speaking to Nana in the spirit world, that within mediumship, we actually teach somebody to put in that bubble of light and to know how to protect your energy. And then at some point in time within their mediumship, they get this aha that they are pure light, in the sense that their energy field, that there's a level of protection already there for them, doing mediumship, staying in the 3D, so to speak. And yet, when I hear you say that there's this exchange, there's these entities, I know that it can sound incredibly fearful when it's like, well, okay, so if it's not the bubble of light, what the heck am I going to do? What would be your answer if the bubble of light's not enough? What's the next best thing?
So the bubble of light is still important, right?
Yeah.
What I would say to people when you're setting up your protective space is make it breathable. And when I say that, what happens is we put this bubble, and we get locked in this real oppressive energy that we've locked in. And we actually sometimes will lock parts of our shadow out or in, lock ourselves out of experiences that we need to grow, and do all sorts of things like that. So I always say, if you're creating a protective bubble, make it breathable, make it so that it is allows love and light energy to come in, and it repels low vibration energies, entities, attachments, ego, and like. But it doesn't keep them out. It just means that if something comes into this sacred space, they are not allowed to violate free will. So things can come in and out, but they can't violate my free will. So that's that sovereignty thing. That's like that intention is probably the most important thing. And really it is working on yourself and holding yourself in love. So say if you're completely unaware of entities, it doesn't mean that if without a healer, without knowledge of it, you can't heal. You just can't. You're going to be stuck. If you are recognizing a pattern and you are holding yourself in compassion and love, and you are addressing those parts of you that are wounded and being with them, a lot of that stuff can fall away of its own accord. Yes, sometimes we get these really huge upper level infiltration contracts that are really meant to mess with our purpose, it gets a bit tougher. But it doesn't mean that we don't have power, regardless, to have free will and to have this stuff shift. We actually do a lot of work in our sleep. I say that to people who come for sessions and they think, oh, I can't do that without you. That is not, no. You're never reliant on someone. You do have that power. You are doing stuff in your sleep. When you take inspired action in your day and you overcome that fear, you are getting rid of a pattern. You are doing that work. You don't know that you're doing that work. You know, you are breaking that soul contract. You are healing that imprint. It's just practice. But the benefit of having the awareness and expanding is that you can pick up on something quickly and you go in and you can flush it out quickly. So it's not, it doesn't have to be a process that is arduous, if you know what I mean. It doesn't mean that you don't have layers that come up. Everyone does. I still do, of course. Everyone still does. When you go and see a healer, we don't have all of our stuff together. Everybody has layers. Everybody's expanding.
Yeah,
everybody gets it. Yeah, it's not like you have. If we all had, you know, that level of self-mastery, we probably wouldn't be here. So,
well, that's the thing with healers is, you know, people say, oh, have you, you know, go to a healer, have they got their life together? But the thing is with healers, they typically put their hand up for a soul contract to walk a very dark path so that they have the awareness and the aha and the experience to know that what they're doing is true and of the highest good and all of that. So yeah, many healers. I imagine you've got some story. We won't go into them, but like you've got your stories of walking down very dark paths, and likewise, that it's sort of, for me anyway, knowing that I've walked through those dark paths, those dark chapters. When I show up for a client, holy crap! Like I can see that energy.
100%. You have, it means you have the belief and the knowledge that, of course, it can change no matter what. Like, does not matter how long you've been sitting in an energy band, doesn't matter how long you've been in that pattern, you can change it, and you can have a different, you know, story, identity, outcome. And I think that's why, like you said, I don't really buy into the wounded healer thing, because I feel that becomes like the savior, I have to be wounded to heal, that type of thing. And I know you get that, but you're right. I do feel like we've come in and we do choose to experience things so that we know how to help other people with those particular issues, and how, you know, you have the experience or the past life experiences to know how to clear that and know it can be overcome.
Yeah, absolutely. When you're doing this kind of work though, Fiona, like, do you find it draining, or how do you, if you're going into, I'll just ask one question at a time. Do you find it draining?
Okay, when I was younger, I did find it draining. I've had so much trouble with energy drain. And I will tell you my pitfalls that I went through so that people can be aware of these things. So first of all, the easiest one, overgiving, not having value in yourself, worrying that someone won't believe what you're saying, not feeling like it's enough. That ties up your energy and exhausts you when you try and do healing, makes your healings go over time, those types of things. So you clear that, maybe, right? And then the next thing is, maybe you've got contracts with particular entities from the past that are keeping you very busy, clearing all the time, attacks, clearing layers, so that you're distracted all the time and you're exhausted, and you're not living your life. You're actually just in a state of defense, fix. So it gets you in that mindset. Clearing away that stuff, still a bit drained. Start looking at the perfectionism, all the parts of you that maybe are really useful, like the engineer archetype that can get all the detail and for their clients and really help them. But maybe it's making you indulge in the detail a bit too much. Maybe it's making you give a little bit too much when you're doing your summaries or you're writing your reports. Maybe it's tying your energy up. Okay, so start getting rid of that. Next thing, getting out of your body when you're doing healing. I did that a lot. I didn't try, because I came in with awareness of the darker spectrum and I had been manipulated in many lives. I did come in knowing not to just trust any old energy that came in. And that was really beneficial because it meant that I didn't just trust that guide, or I didn't just, but it meant that I didn't trust anything. So when I did healings for people, I was going off and getting all the information myself. I wasn't getting any help from my team. No, you can't help. I'm holding this space for this client and I'm only making sure that nothing is going to infiltrate them. So going off, getting all the information, stepping out of the body, doing. It meant I would come out of a healing and I would be very, very aired out and very tired because I wasn't staying in my body and I wasn't trusting in myself and my team, and I wasn't allowing the process to happen. And finally, still getting drained. What is going on? Been doing this for years. Self-sabotage through what I would say is ultra shadows. So parts of you that have really split off so bad and are so distorted that they act a bit like an entity themselves. So that was running my energy in reverse all the time. So it meant every time I tried to step towards the light, anytime I tried to do that type of work, I would get really, really drained. Once I got rid of that, it's a breeze. It's a breeze. It's joyful. It's energizing. It's what it should be. I close off a letter at the door and I'm not drained. I'm not aired out. I'm grounded and I can just get on with what I'm doing, which is how it's meant to be. But gosh, did it take me a long time to
that
get
was my evil witch
there.
laugh then, like,
I
oh,
know.
like, just do that. And I'm like,
it took a long time. And that's what I mean. Sometimes when you're working with someone, and you do some work, say you go to a healer and you have a real intent, this thing is really bothering me, this issue is bothering me, and you go to them and you get a bit of a shift, but you don't get a full shift. Part of us, our shadow can sometimes be like, well, they didn't do that right, or why am I still getting this? It's what you can deal with at the time sometimes, and it's how things need to expand. So, well, maybe they're just not the person for you that has that answer, right? Yeah. But it does mean that, like you persevere, and it didn't mean that I was a failure, like, well, they've been doing that for years and they still can't fix that. It's not that. It comes from a point of what was I ready and able to clear at that time, and what on a soul level could I handle at that time. So that, it's not seeing yourself from a point of view of like, oh, I'm not doing this fast enough. It's actually sometimes when we rush our journey, that's when we really get ungrounded and we really start to spiral, because it's just we're not allowing time for things to integrate, and we're not we don't have this ebb and flow. We're not actually receiving the benefit from the healing. We're just going on to the next thing it's still here and I just want to clear it. We're not kind of allowing ourselves to be present. So yeah, it was a long journey with energy drain and overgiving and sessions going for many hours and just,
nuts. Because that's where the only one I would have added to that really beautiful comprehensive list would have been an energy drain for me was attracting in I already knew that I had a contract to work through narcissistic kind of toxic relationships, being that empath and that overgiver, wanting to give, to be valued. And the narcissist is typically so unhealthy within themselves that they're the ones who are like, yeah, cool, I'll take. Like, but a healthy person is like, okay, that's
you're right. There's definitely the boundaries thing too, like yourself. Yeah, how much do you care for yourself that you're not going to and I think sometimes because I had that people pleaser was like a huge thing for me in my life, it meant that sometimes when I knew something was a bit wrong, or I could just say no to a person or a client, I didn't do it because I didn't want them to go away feeling bad, or I didn't want to be misunderstood or judged. And so that energy was, in the beginning, like you said, like allowing people that are maybe going to, especially in the beginning when you start doing healings, you tend to get people that you have contracts with, or have similar wounding to you, and so you do their healing, and then you go and do your healing straight afterwards. So it's a bit of definitely. So how have you found it? Have you found, do you still find you get energy drain, or like how do you combat that? How's your journey been?
That's a good question. Thank you, Fiona. I reflecting even on the COVID times, I had nothing else to do, so I was just doing session after session after session after session, and on some level it felt great, but then I'd actually had enough of doing the one-on-one stuff, that you would think that if you kind of burnt out from the one-on-one, take a break. But I actually did the one-on-one, go do group work. And I actually discovered that through the burnout, resentment, sort of draining kind of stage, that I found more of a spark within my purpose to actually just pivot the business completely. So it was more NLP training, teaching how to enhance your intuition. It was teaching spiritual development. And it was like, and what I recognized from doing group work was that I was attracting in beautiful healers that would help one another heal. And it was like, cool, like there's the
It is.
tribe. And it was like,
It's amazing.
so I think that like we should just write a whole course on this, but the next one after that was loneliness, being a healer and not having other healers to bounce ideas. Um, and just client confidentiality is always there, but when you get a client, I'm thinking of one where another healer came to me and she said, I got a client who's got an obsession with feet. I didn't know what to do with that. And immediately we both just laughed at the ridiculousness that of just the whole scenario that we were put in that.
Yeah.
And so sometimes that laughter and the play, the like-minded
Yeah,
friendship
well,
needs
that's the
to come
thing.
in.
Yeah, 100%. I agree, because I never stopped doing healing but I stopped advertising for a long time. So I would
Yes.
take on the emergency clients, or the people that the word of mouth from people that really were, in dire need, and I would do it then. But I really burnt myself out. I did end up almost giving myself spiritual PTSD from having a bit of a baptism of fire with how much I was clearing for people and how much I was clearing for myself. And even though I was aware that a pattern was happening in terms of almost like keeping me deliberately in a cycle of doing so many healings that I was burning myself out, I did clear that. If you only take a serious point of view to this process, and you don't have if you're only seeing the dark and you're only seeing that spectrum and you're only working on the sadness and the sorrow, if you don't take time to have anything else in your life, which I didn't, then your life becomes just that. And so you get burnt out, you get lonely, and you see only the negative, and you do get a bit of a beef with the light, in the sense of like, is this all there is? Like as though you're just, you kind of lose sight of what's actually going on. And it does, and if something like that's going wrong, it's exactly like what you said. You pivot because you're being shown that this way is not working anymore, and this way has become kind of toxic. This way of working has kind of, I've lost sight of, like, I need to learn something else in this. I'm getting like shown a lesson in this. And so for me, I definitely did need to go away, live, ground, learn to be human, remember what type of music I like, remember that because I'd really lost a lot of that. I had my day job, and then after work, I just did healing. And if I wasn't healing other people, I was healing myself. And it just, And because of the way I was doing it, like I was saying before, where I was out of my body a lot, it was like, you're actually just not here. And you
Yeah, not
can't
learning to
manifest if you're not here.
no.
So I wasn't really bringing anything in for me except, and I did have, lovely clients. I sort of realized early on, not to attract people that were going to, try and test me, because whenever I had that, I was like, okay, there's something in me that doesn't feel validated. So I'll work on my stuff. And I stopped sort of getting clients, so much like that. But, you do occasionally have people sent to you, whether it's as a client or just in your general life, that are really sent to trigger something, to sort of derail you and come through you a different way. Maybe you've got a really good protective boundary, but you really open your heart to this specific person. And in doing that, it's like a way to come in to, so.
Yeah. And you get that in the training groups, in the sense that I'm the trainer, but I'm also the student, because I'm learning so much about them and vice versa, and how the energy works through their perspective. And I do notice that sometimes in groups, that no matter what kind of protective energy that you put around that group, that everybody, especially my groups, they tend to be healers, professional healers within themselves. So there's still this knowing that their buttons are going to be pushed even in the training group, but they've also got the ability to work on their own stuff. So it's not this pure la-di-da,
And
everybody's
also
perfect space.
the reason why those groups come together is because they want, like, on a soul level, we want to get rid of, and I don't even just mean I have a particular past with this person. It means that part of what you're doing and your group and what you're teaching is going to trigger exactly what the person wants to get rid of. And so that gets triggered in this dynamic. And even though you're holding this beautiful space for that to happen without further infiltration coming in, they are going to trigger each other's shadow. We are going to trigger each other's ego. We are going to, like, trigger old woundings. And that's when, like, over time, instead of just reacting, you start to get to a point where you see, doesn't mean that it's easy. You see what's happening and you go, this is showing me what I want to get rid of. It's not about what that person said. It's about healing this wound. And then that doesn't matter. It doesn't mean you have to love that person or, feel like you want to be best friends with them, but you do. It is coming up for a reason, and it's just staying in that observer state. But you do. It's not going to be usually all fluffy, because you're going there with an intent to clear stuff,
Yeah. And that's why it's so important to have that balance, because the other thing that I do, I know you've got your garden, I've got my garden, we go out there, we have that self, replenishing time in nature, but then counteract the one-on-one stuff, I also make sure that I bring my tribe, the group of people together. We're going for pancakes on Sunday at Pancake Parlor, and it's like,
see, that's
bring
so
your tarot
lovely.
cards, like let's read the waitresses and freak them out, like
just to bring some fun into it, because that's the thing. We're not meant to be here to suffer, and we're not meant to be here to just it all be very serious work. We're actually meant to have the softness and the joy and the gratitude and all the good things, and that's what transmutes the other stuff, right? So when we forget that, we get stuck in that loop. It does just become a slog. What we're doing.
So anybody listening, if you're a healer and you're doing the energy drain, there's a list to have a look at. You can be proactive. Fiona, I'm curious, before we wrap things up, I'm curious, like, do you have any awesome any client experiences, outcomes that you can share with us?
Yeah, look, just a lot, I guess, dynamics changing with families or with work, or just a pattern, a belief system that just felt like it would never, ever lift, just suddenly, not feel like them anymore. Like, oh, I don't think that anymore. Just those types of
It can be
shifts.
subtle, right? We're not looking for the big fireworks.
Yeah, and it can be, or physical things, like not having an issue anymore, not having a physical illness anymore, starting to get feel more light and life, not having the food intolerance anymore, not having, things like that. And it's not always, like you said, it's not always like a miracle. Some things shift very quickly for someone, and some things take, like my energy drain took a long time, right? Doesn't mean that you're not on the path of fixing something or having it healed. But yeah, some things are just really big immediate shifts, and some things take a little bit more of a push. But how about you? I'm sure you ever made some amazing client stories.
Some of my, you're right. There's some of my favorite stories are the relationship turnarounds, or the way that when you work on one person, like work on the mama bear, that the kids start to feel calmer, the relationship gets calmer. It's this dominoes effect, the health, the money gets easier. So you only ever have to work on, for me anyway, I only ever have to work on one person. But I always loved telling the story that I did have a client who was a bit of she wasn't skeptical, but there was a part of her that was fearful of this stuff, and maybe it's not going to work, and Claire, you're making this up. And she had the session in the car, and 1 minute I'm like, oh, okay, look at that weird energy you've got there, let's shift it. And it was like, whoa. And then her electrics in her car completely blew up, and it was a new car, and she was like, okay, maybe you're not making this up. And it was like, I couldn't make that up if I tried. But
yeah, just sometimes too very specific things, maybe someone hasn't told anyone before, a bit like very specific parts of their life and where it's sitting maybe in the body, and then healing that, and then that issue going away. And I think that's really can be so empowering for people when they realize, oh, like that all wasn't for it turns it into a beautiful thing, right? It means that there's no regret anymore in what they went through, because they've actually been empowered by what happened. And I love that part of the work. I love people starting to see where they're empowered and where things can change that they just didn't think could change.
Yeah, and I mean on that one there, that if you're wanting to start a new business, or you're wanting to jump into a relationship, not jump, but invest yourself in a relationship, and then people, I'm guessing you get this too, Fiona, is like, oh, but what if, and it's like, no, like if we could clear that from the past, that you've now got these doors opening for a new job, a new relationship, give it a go. And if there's some triggers there, then we just go and clear them. Like, it's just
yeah exactly. It's just it's sort of frees you up from just being stuck in those narratives of I can't, or that something bad will happen, or I can't do that. And it just, people start to see those shifts, and they start to just, gain traction and feel like anything is possible, because it is. Like for me, my background and what got me into healing was really bad chronic illness too, like you'll be in a wheelchair for the rest of your life illness. So for me to be where I am and shoveling out in the garden, and it's like I'm proof that those things, or lots of other hurdles that I'm sure you've overcome and I've overcome, and it is that proof of like nothing is concrete, like things can change. So it doesn't necessarily mean that you get the miracle and you just magically are better one day and it's all like that. If we don't hold that expectation or hold ourselves to an idea of like perfection, the journey goes a lot easier, and you enjoy the journey as you go, right? And you find all the great moments all the way along the track. And then 5 years down the track, 10 years, 3 years, 2 years, 1 month, doesn't matter. You see a huge difference, and you go, wow, I don't even recognize that version of me. I don't.
Wow. Such an incredible human being there, Fiona, and just the generosity that you have to share these stories, and hopefully opening up people's hearts there to recognize that they too, if they've been told they can't walk, or like there's this limitation. I mean, it doesn't have to be a big thing, but even just the childhood wounding in the primary school of like, you'll never amount to anything, like, no, watch me. All of that's, as you're saying there, it's not set in stone. You can, it's all possible. It's just,
I agree.
so,
like basically anything that isn't the vibration of like love is an illusion, right? So if you're told that you aren't this, or you can't do this, or you just have to not believe it, or give yourself enough space to go, allow myself to have an opportunity to have something else shown to me, some
Yeah,
other like opportunity, because that's
yeah,
what we tend to do when we get that told those things. Even if we don't want to take it on board, it sets that seed, and we just kind of feel like that's concrete and we can't change it, and then we
yeah,
don't change it. So yeah, even if you can't believe, you don't have to believe, as you found for the lady, that you don't have to believe things for them to necessarily work, but you have to allow space for something to work, you know,
yeah.
to show you
Wow.
that, to show you a difference, you know, to show you that where you could be wrong.
Yeah, yeah. So it's coming back to questioning your thoughts.
Yeah.
Curious questioning. Fiona, allowing any listeners here to get in touch with you, what are the services that you're currently offering at the moment?
So I primarily do personal healing sessions, but I have expanded to do house clearings and website clearings, just because I find that, especially when you're doing you have a business, or you're doing spiritual work especially, I found that, you know, I would try and read people's articles that they'd written on their website, and I couldn't read it, you know, like I just couldn't take
Yeah,
it in. And
too
I
much
started to
stress.
see energy bands of things that were infiltrating to stop people from reading things, and muddled energy. So I started to offer that as a, you know, clearing out your social media and your website and things like that, and see what's kind of maybe coming through to you through those avenues. And also houses, because I have such a soft spot. I love working with the land, clearly, and nature, but I have a soft spot because I did grow up, you know, right through my 20s, just having so much trouble with the houses that I've lived in, and not knowing how to clear it, and not knowing how to get a good night's rest, and having night terrors and things. So I especially have that affinity, especially for kids and stuff, to help people feel safe in their space,
Yeah,
and just clear out, you know, and clear out energy that shouldn't be there. And
yeah.
yeah.
That's yeah. Because the website one, that's what got my attention, because I knew from my own experience that I would want to post something or write something or offer something on my website, and I just felt like there was this vacuum of energy that I pouring so much energy into it, and yet I wasn't getting the feedback. And so when you looked at my website, you're like, oh yeah, Claire, there's that vortex portal band of energy that's just taking your energy off to the outer skirts of the universe. I was like, that makes sense. And so now when I approach my website or Instagram, I'm like, no, this is actually what I want to deliver. And I know that it will stay within Earth's.
Yeah, well, that's the thing, and we just, you know, everything's energy, so they kind of get cleared in the same way that I might be clearing, you know, human like the human field, you know, because we all have these, you know, especially in houses. It doesn't necessarily have to be an old house at all. There's all sorts. So I did want to offer that just as a, I think it's important, and sometimes I'm kind of called to attune an area or a land up into the higher realms, not to bring that energy up, but to allow a actual passageway, a channel of energy between the lower frequencies, because a lot of our areas around the earth have been capped at certain dimensional frequencies. So it's allowing parts of the earth to evolve as we are like as earth is working through its evolution and raising its vibration, you know, so are we. So that seemed like an important part of what I'd be doing as well.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. So you have yeah, you have that beautiful offering there. I will definitely put in the show notes how to get in touch with Fiona, you know, within your Instagram. And I can imagine you're going to get very busy now, Fiona.
Oh, thank you. Yeah. I'm it's just really nice to be at a place where I've accepted my journey, because for a long time I didn't. So I'm really enjoying it. And now that I don't have energy drain and things like that, it's just a joy. It's just a joy to be able to help people.
Yay. Fiona, was there anything that I didn't ask that you wanted the listeners to hear?
No, I think that's it. I could probably just waffle and talk talk forever.
No, there'll be
But
another one, everybody. There'll be another one. We'll get Fiona back and watch it again.
yeah, if they have any more questions for my ramblings, but no, it's just been lovely. It's just been lovely to speak with you and learn a little bit more about your journey as well. And it's just really nice to be able to bounce off people. I think, as you know, we were saying, you know, the journey can be a little bit lonely, but it certainly doesn't have to be. And I do think we're all meant to be a bit more connected than we possibly have been as in, you know, healing.
Yeah. Yeah, bringing that connection, one of my top values.
Yeah, exactly. And I think, it's just been part of our nature. It has so much of being here has been disconnected from everything, ourselves, nature, whatever. It's all about kind of coming back, isn't it, to that unity?
Yeah.
Or as you said,
Yeah.
the sacred neutral.
Absolutely. Well, thank you, Fiona. And as I say at every end of my purposeful conversations, you know, I look forward to talking to you soon.
You
Thanks,
too. I
everybody.
love it. Thank you.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.